Welcome back to the channel, story lovers. Today, we're stepping into a place where the rain never stops, the coffee is always hot, and the nightmares feel a little too real. Let's pull up a chair at the Midnight Cafe and explore a tale of surreal horror that will make you think twice about that next cup of joe. Rain slides down neon glass as Ryan pushes open the cafe door. A bell chimes, a soft, almost lost sound beneath the hum of jazz and the hiss of a coffee steamer. It's a familiar scene, cozy and warm, a refuge from the dark, wet streets. Across the room, Aaliyah waves from a corner booth, her smile a small beacon in the dim light. The chatter of other patrons folds around them, a comforting blanket of noise that feels almost rehearsed. "Traffic," he mutters, a simple excuse as he slides into the seat opposite her. Aaliyah just grins, a knowing look in her eyes as she pushes a steaming cup toward him. "Then drink," she says, her voice a playful whisper. "Coffee fixes nightmares." He takes a sip. The rich, dark liquid is a shock of warmth, and the steam curls up from the cup, forming faint, fleeting whispers in the air. "Stay." Ryan blinks. Did he just hear that? He glances around, but no one else seems to have noticed. The other patrons are lost in their own worlds, their conversations a steady, unbroken murmur. He tries to shake it off, but an unsettling feeling begins to crawl under his skin. He watches the barista moving behind the counter, a silent, graceful dance that seems just a little too perfect. A man at a nearby table laughs, a hearty, genuine sound, and then he laughs again. The exact same laugh at the exact same pitch, a perfect, impossible echo. A loop that shouldn't exist. The cozy cafe suddenly feels like a stage, and he's the only one who doesn't know his lines. "You look pale," Aaliyah says, her brow furrowed with concern. "Just déjà vu," Ryan answers, forcing a small smile. "Like I've been here before, this exact moment." Aaliyah reminds him he was here just last week with her at this same table. But he shakes his head. This is different. This isn't just a memory. It's a replay, a glitch in reality. When he looks up again, the barista is staring directly at him. Her smile is wide, stretched just a fraction too far to be friendly. "Another cup for you, Ryan?" she asks, her voice smooth as cream. He stiffens, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. I didn't tell you my name." The barista's smile doesn't falter. "You did," she says, her tone chillingly casual. "You do. Every night." As she speaks, she picks up his cup. It fills to the brim with dark coffee, but she doesn't use the pot. The liquid just appears, rising silently from the bottom of the ceramic. The laws of physics seem to have taken a coffee break. Suddenly, the lights flicker, plunging the cafe into a split second of darkness. In that single, frozen heartbeat, everyone stops. Every patron is a statue, mid-sip, mid-laugh, mid-sentence. Then, just as quickly, the lights snap back on, and reality clicks back into place. The chatter resumes, the steam rises, the jazz plays on. But the moment of stillness hangs in the air, a shared secret between him and Aaliyah. "Did you see that?" Aaliyah whispers, her eyes wide with a fear that mirrors his own. Her gaze darts to the window. Outside, the rain, which had been streaking down the glass, is frozen. Each individual droplet hangs suspended in midair, a crystal chandelier of impossible physics. Before they can process this, two sharp knocks echo through the cafe. Thump, thump. They don't come from the door, they come from inside the wall right beside their booth. Their heads snap toward the sound. A large, ornate mirror hangs on the wall, reflecting the entire cafe in perfect, stunning detail. The other patrons, the counter, the steaming cups, Aaliyah, everything is there, except him. In the reflection, the seat he's sitting in is empty. Chills race down his spine. "Reflections don't lie," a voice murmurs, not from the room, but from inside his own head. He pushes himself up from the table, his legs trembling. He turns to Aaliyah, his voice cracking. "Aaliyah, do you see me? Am I here?" She nods frantically, her face pale. "Yes, Ryan, you're right here." But then her eyes flicker to the window, to the reflection in the dark, rain-slicked glass. And she screams. In the window's reflection, her own image slowly, deliberately turns its head to look directly at her, independent of her own movement. Her reflection is watching her. The whispers are back, louder now, swirling around them from all directions. "Sit down. Stay. You belong here." And then, silence. A profound, absolute quiet descends upon the cafe. The jazz stops. The chatter dies. Every single patron, in unison, slowly looks up from their tables, and they are all smiling. The same lifeless, vacant, terrifyingly wide grin as the barista. The cafe has become a gallery of smiling mannequins, and he and Aaliyah are the main exhibit. The barista steps out from behind the counter, her movements slow and deliberate. "We've been waiting for you, Ryan." As she approaches, the coffee in his cup spills over the edge, but it doesn't fall. In a horrifying display of reversed gravity, the dark liquid climbs back up the side of the cup, rejoining the pool within. This isn't a cafe, it's a trap. Adrenaline floods his system. He grabs Elia's hand. "Run!" They dash for the door, their footsteps echoing in the crushing silence. He fumbles with the handle, yanks it open, and they burst through, only to find themselves standing in the exact same spot. The same cafe, the same silent, smiling faces, the same table with its 2 cups of coffee. They are right back where they started. The door didn't lead out, it led in. "This isn't real," Ryan gasps, his chest heaving. From right behind him, the barista's voice finishes his sentence, a seamless continuation. "Leaving yet?" They spin around. The normal lights of the cafe are bleeding into a deep, hellish red. The steam rising from the coffee cups is thickening, twisting into ghostly, half-formed faces that hover and writhe in the air above the tables. A new voice drifts through the crimson haze, calm and disembodied, speaking like a narrator in a dream. The first sip wakes you. The last one keeps you. Ryan's gaze is drawn, as if by an invisible force, down into his own cup of coffee. The dark, glossy surface is a perfect mirror, and in it his own reflection stares back up at him. And it smiles. Not his smile. It's the wide, empty, horrifying grin of the barista, of the patrons, of the nightmare he can't escape. And as his reflection smiles, the screen and his world fades to black. What a chilling story. It's a fantastic exploration of how our most comforting rituals can be twisted into something truly terrifying. What do you think would happen next? Is Ryan trapped forever, or is there a way out of the Midnight Cafe? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this dive into the darkness, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. Until next time, stay safe, and maybe stick to tea for a while. Ryan blinked, trying to get his eyes to focus in the dim flicker of the candlelight. The coffee shop was gone. Or maybe it had just changed. The walls were now blackened with soot, the tables were overturned, and the sharp, acrid smell of smoke filled the air. Aaliyah's hand shook as she held onto him, her voice a desperate whisper. "This isn't real, Ryan. This can't be." But the warmth of the flames licking at the floorboards told a different story. They stepped slowly into the narrow hallway where the door had just opened. The smooth jazz now replaced by the faint, chilling echo of a woman humming. A low, mournful sound coming from somewhere deep inside the darkness. Ryan fumbled for his phone. No signal. "Let's go back," he said, turning. But the cafe door had vanished. In its place stood a solid wall of bricks, burned and cracked. Aaliyah's breath hitched, her panic rising. "Ryan, I told you this place burned down. I was here the night it happened." Her voice trembled, a deep, raw guilt bleeding through every word. Before Ryan could even begin to ask what she meant, something fell from the ceiling. A coffee cup, impossibly still steaming. It shattered at his feet. The dark liquid seeped into the floorboards and began to spread, moving like black veins through the wood. Aaliyah stumbled back, horrified. "She's still here," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "Who?" Ryan asked, a cold dread creeping up his spine, a part of him not wanting to know the answer. "The owner, Nora. She never left." Just then, a shadow moved across the far end of the hall, a woman's silhouette, her shoulders hunched, dragging something heavy and metallic. Ryan reached for Aaliyah, but she was already staring down the corridor, her lips trembling. "That's her," she breathed. The humming grew louder, closer. They crept forward, the candles flickering violently, as if the very air was resisting them. The hallway opened into a ruined kitchen. The shelves were charred, the walls cracked, and every metal surface reflected the faint, dancing glimmers of firelight. In the center of the room, on a small table, stood an old percolator, somehow still brewing. Steam rose from its spout, carrying that same strange metallic scent. Ryan's voice was a low whisper. "Aaliyah, what did you mean you were here?" She hesitated, her voice barely audible. "We used to come here after class. I worked part-time for Nora. That night, I spilled a pot of coffee. It hit the stove. The fire spread so fast. She was still inside when it happened." Her eyes welled with tears. "I tried to get her out, Ryan, I swear I did." Suddenly, the percolator whistled sharply, a piercing scream of metal and heat. But from its spout poured not coffee, but a thick, dark stream of blood. The temperature in the room dropped instantly, a bone-chilling cold that had nothing to do with the night air. Ryan grabbed Aaliyah's arm. "We need to—" But the kitchen door slammed shut behind them with a deafening boom. The humming transformed into a voice, soft but broken, echoing all around them. "You left me to burn." Aaliyah clapped her hands over her ears, shaking her head frantically. No, I didn't," she cried out. The percolator rattled violently on the table, cups crashed from the shelves, and a figure began to take shape in the steam. A woman's form, her face half melted, her eyes hollow, black pits of despair. Ryan backed away, pulling Aaliyah behind him, but the ghost's hand extended, a single skeletal finger pointing directly at her. "Drink. What you started," it whispered, its voice like grinding glass. Ryan snatched a knife from the counter, lunging forward, but it passed straight through the apparition like smoke. The ghost's voice deepened, distorting into something monstrous. "The fire took my breath. Now, you'll take my place." Flames erupted, crawling up the walls, encircling them in a ring of fire. Ryan dragged Aaliyah toward a side door, forcing it open with all his might. But behind it was not an exit. It was the same coffee shop again, untouched, bright, and filled with the same silent, watching customers as before. The clock on the wall read 11:59. They had gone back in time. Aaliyah gasped, her face pale. "Ryan, it's happening again." Ryan frantically looked around. Everything was repeating. The waiter appeared at their table, a pale, faint smile on his lips. "Your order, miss?" Aaliyah stared at him, bewildered. "I didn't order this time." He placed 2 steaming cups in front of them anyway. Ryan A.S. hands shook as he looked down at his own cup. His reflection wasn't tea, his own. It was Nora's face, burned and glaring back at him. "Aaliyah," he said urgently, "don't drink." But she was lost, trembling, tears streaming down her face as the guilt completely overwhelmed her. "Maybe this is the only way it ends," she whispered, her hand reaching for the cup. Ryan slapped it away. It shattered on the floor, and in an instant, every single customer in the cafe turned their heads toward them again, their eyes black and hollow. The waiter's smile widened into an unnatural grin. "You broke the circle." The lights exploded. Glass rained down like shards of ice. Aaliyah screamed, clutching Ryan as chairs flew across the room and cups shattered against the walls. 1,000 whispers chanted one terrifying phrase over and over. finish the sip. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. An oppressive silence fell over the room. When Ryan dared to open his eyes, they were back at their table. No fire, no screaming, just quiet music and the warm glow of the lights. The clock on the wall read 12:01. The waiter stood beside them, perfectly calm. "Another round?" Ryan's voice cracked. "No, we're leaving." The man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "You can't." He nodded toward Elia. Her hands were resting on the table, covered in fresh red burns that hadn't been there moments before. She stared down at them in absolute horror, trembling uncontrollably. "Ryan, I think she's still inside me." The lights flickered one last time, and on the wall behind them, written in dark, dripping coffee stains, appeared the words, "The last sip is never yours." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tales. Let me know in the comments what you would have done if you were trapped in this nightmare. Stay safe, and see you next time. Rain hammered against the charred skeleton of what was once the Moonbrew Cafe. Inside, Ryan heaved for breath, his hands shaking so badly they could barely grip the splintered edge of a broken table, which seemed to shift and stutter between the cozy warmth of a beloved coffee shop and the cold, dead reality of a ruin. Steam, like a lone, ghostly finger, curled from a single pristine cup of coffee sitting between them. It was untouched, a strange island of perfection in a sea of destruction. The silence was a heavy blanket, suffocating and thick with unspoken words. Finally, Ryan couldn't bear it any longer. His voice was a raw whisper, barely cutting through the sound of the storm. "Elia, say something, please." She didn't respond with words. Instead, a low hum escaped her lips. It was a familiar tune, the same soft, haunting melody she'd been humming for days. As the notes filled the air, Ryan glanced down at the untouched cup of coffee. Her reflection stared back, but it wasn't her. Before Ryan could recoil, a figure materialized beside their table. A silent waiter, his movements fluid and unnatural, placed another steaming cup on the table with a soft clink. The air grew colder, heavier. A low murmur started, a sibilant whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Guilty. Guilty. Guilty." The other patrons, who had been nothing more than shadows in the periphery, were all staring at them. Their faces were indistinct, but their eyes were black, bottomless voids that seemed to drink the light from the room. The whispers grew louder, an accusing chorus of condemnation. Elia finally spoke, her voice trembling, but it wasn't just her own. It was layered, hollow, as if another voice was speaking through her. "She's making me see it," she shuddered, her gaze fixed on the wall. "The fire." As she said it, the illusion shattered. Flames, vibrant and terrifying, erupted from the walls, consuming the cafe in an instant inferno. The roar was deafening, and the heat was so intense Ryan felt the air singe his lungs. The scene ripped through his reality, pulling him into a violent flashback. He was watching a younger Elia, her face streaked with tears and soot, pounding desperately on a locked wooden door. Her fists were raw, her voice hoarse with panic. "Nora, please, open the door." From inside, a scream of pure terror answered, a voice choked with smoke. "Don't leave me! Elia, don't leave me!" Then the world was fire. A wave of orange and yellow swallowed the door, the screams, everything. The vision dissolved as quickly as it had appeared. Ryan blinked, disoriented, the sound of rain replacing the roar of the blaze. The cafe was back to its burnt-out state. Standing before him was a figure that made his blood run cold. It was a woman, or what was left of one. Half of her body was a canvas of horrific burns, her skin cracked and peeling like old paint. The other half was untouched, eerily beautiful. A sickening smile stretched across her ruined face. "You brought her back," Nora hissed, her voice a dry, crackling sound like burning leaves. Her gaze wasn't on Elia, but locked onto Ryan. Suddenly, the floor beneath him seemed to liquefy. Tendrils of what looked like liquid fire shot up, wrapping around his ankles and pulling him down. The floorboards offered no resistance. He was sinking into an abyss of flames. Nora's horrifying smile the last thing he saw before the darkness consumed him. Ryan woke up with a choked gasp, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was back in the cafe, sitting at the same broken table. The rain still lashed against the windows. It was as if it had all been a nightmare. But Elia was gone. Her chair was empty. The only sign she'd been there was her cup, still sitting on the table, a faint wisp of steam rising from its surface. The silent waiter appeared beside him again, his presence more menacing than before. He leaned in, his voice a low, chilling murmur that slithered directly into Ryan's ear. He scrambled from his chair and ran towards the back of the cafe, towards the kitchen. The air grew hotter, thick with the acrid smell of burnt coffee. He burst through the swinging doors and froze. The large industrial percolator sat in the center of the room, glowing a malevolent cherry red. The steam hissing from its spout wasn't normal. It twisted and coiled, taking on vaguely human forms that writhed in the air. And lying on the floor beside it, bathed in its hellish glow, was Elia. Her eyes were half closed, a faint, serene smile on her lips. She was whispering, her words barely audible over the hiss of the machine. "You can't wake someone who's already inside." Ryan lunged for her, but it was too late. With a deafening shriek of tortured metal, the percolator exploded. A massive cloud of steam erupted outwards, and from its very center, Nora's ghost solidified. She was more terrifying now, less human, her form made of roiling vapor and rage. She drifted towards them, her burnt hand outstretched. "Drink. With me," her voice echoed, a promise and a threat. He grabbed Elia's arm, hoisting her to her feet. "We have to go. Now!" He pulled her away from the spectral horror and into a long, dark hallway he hadn't seen before. It stretched into an impossible blackness. As they ran, a new terror emerged. Floating in the darkness on either side of them were dozens of coffee cups, each steaming, each whispering his name in a chorus of ghostly voices. He ignored them, focusing on the pinprick of white light that had appeared at the far end of the hall. It grew larger, brighter, a beacon of hope in the suffocating nightmare. He pushed forward, dragging Elia with him, his lungs burning, his mind screaming. They burst through the light, stumbling out into the blinding shock of daylight. The sun was warm, the sky was a peaceful blue. Ryan turned, panting, and looked back. The Moonbrew Cafe was gone. In its place was nothing but a pile of ash and blackened rubble, fenced off and forgotten. It looked like it had been that way for years. Ryan whispered, a wave of relief so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. He looked at Elia, expecting to see the same relief on her face. But she wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the ashes, her expression unreadable. And in her hand, she was holding a steaming cup of coffee. "It burned 5 years ago," she said softly, her voice clear and calm. "But it always opens again, when someone takes the last sip." She lifted the cup. Ryan looked into the dark, reflective surface of the coffee. For a fleeting moment, he saw Nora's face smiling faintly back at them. As a cold wind swept through the ruins, a final, chilling whisper seemed to echo from the ashes, carried on the breeze for only them to hear. "Some cafes never close." Get to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new nightmare. Until next time, stay safe, and somber, slightly trembling voice building in suspense. The sun climbed over the skeletal remains of Moonbrew Cafe, but its morning warmth was a stranger to me. I stood there, a tremor running through my bones, my eyes locked on Elia. She was sipping from a cup that had no right to exist, a cup that should have been nothing more than ash and memory. The air, thick with the ghost of roasted beans, carried a new scent, Metallic, burnt, and unnervingly alive. "Aaliyah, stop," I begged, my voice a dry whisper, but she didn't hear me. Her eyes were a distant, glassy sea, and in their reflection, I saw the impossible. The cafe, whole again. It was bustling, vibrant, filled with the laughter of people who were supposed to be gone. I blinked, and the world lurched. The scent of burnt wood and damp earth was replaced by fresh coffee and warm pastries. I was inside. The lights flickered with a soft, jazzy hum, and the low murmur of conversation filled the air. Customers, all of them, smiled with the same vacant, glassy eyes as Elia. A waiter, impossibly smooth in his movements, glided over to me. His voice was like smoke, curling around me. "Welcome back, sir. Your table's waiting." My gaze snapped across the room. Aaliyah was there at our old table by the window. She waved, her smile a grotesque parody of the one I once loved. It was too wide, too still. The room began to spin, the floral wallpaper pulsing in and out like the walls themselves were breathing. A vintage radio on the counter crackled to life, a disembodied voice cutting through the jazz. And now, for a local reminder, today marks October 19th, 5 years since the tragic fire at Moonbrew Cafe, the fire that killed them all. The music died. Silence fell like a shroud. I forced myself to look, really look, at the faces around me. Every single customer, the smiling waiter, the barista behind the counter, their features were marred by phantom burns, skin peeling away to reveal scorched flesh beneath. A little girl in the corner, one I didn't recognize, began to hum. It was the same lullaby Aaliyah used to hum to soothe herself, a tune that now clawed at my sanity. Then the lights went out. Plunged into absolute darkness, I could hear them. Whispers slithering from every corner, a chorus of ghostly voices all saying the same thing. "Finish your drink." I looked down. A cup, identical to Elia's, sat before me on the table, a table I hadn't even sat at. It was empty a second ago, but now it was full, steam rising in thick, ghostly tendrils. The steam twisted and coiled, forming a grotesque, screaming caricature of Elia's face. She was beside me now, her voice a chilling breath against my ear. "We all burned, Ryan. We just didn't leave." A surge of primal fear and rage shot through me. I grabbed the cup and smashed it against the floor. The sound of shattering porcelain fractured reality itself. The world around me broke into 1,000 temporal shards. I was everywhere at once. Here, the cafe was new, smelling of fresh paint and ambition, Aaliyah and I laughing over our first date. There, it was a maelstrom of orange and black, flames devouring the walls, screams trapped in the roar. And there, the desolate aftermath, rain hissing on charred beams. The scenes looped, faster and faster, a dizzying, nauseating carousel of past and present. Before the fire, during the fire, after the fire. I screamed a raw, ragged sound because at every table in every timeline I saw myself. 1,000 versions of Ryan, each one more decayed, more haunted than the last. Aaliyah walked toward me through the chaos, an anchor in the temporal storm. The right side of her face was perfect, the woman I loved. The left side. It was a ruin of melted skin and glowing red embers, a permanent scar from the inferno. "You can't run from what you drank," she said, her voice a duet of love and damnation. Just as she reached for me, a gentle hand rested on my shoulder. It was Nora, my sister, her form translucent, a ghost among ghosts. She looked at Elia, her spectral eyes filled with a sorrow that transcended death. "He finished it," Nora whispered, and then stillness. The chaos vanished. The smell of smoke and death was gone, replaced by the crisp night air. I was back outside, standing on the same patch of broken pavement. The ruins of the cafe were just ruins again, but in my hand I was holding a cup, a fresh, clean, paper coffee cup. On its side, a newly printed logo. Moon Brew Cafe, grand reopening tonight. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tilted the cup, and my reflection stared back from the dark liquid within. But it wasn't my face. It was Elia's. Inside the reflection, she smiled that same eerie smile. Her voice echoed in my mind, a seductive, deadly whisper. One last sip? As if on cue, a sudden clap of thunder split the sky. The cup in my hand didn't just fall, it exploded. Black coffee, thick as tar, flooded the street, and from its surface, hundreds of screaming faces bubbled up and then sank back into the darkness. A jolt of electricity, and the old neon sign sputtered to life, casting a sickly, blood-red glow over the street. It no longer said Moon Brew, it just said, open. With a groan of rusted hinges, the boarded-up door to the cafe creaked open, all by itself. A foul wind escaped, carrying the smell of burnt sugar and decay, and from the blackness within, a familiar, smoky voice called out, a final, inescapable invitation. Your table's ready.